Although the word never appears in its text, federalism is one of the most important and innovative concepts in the U.S. Constitution. In essence, federalism is a sharing of power between national and state governments. In America, the states existed first, and they struggled to create a national government. To resolve this, the framers needed to address two questions. First, how much power should be vested in the central authority, the national or federal government? Second, how much power should the states retain? The framers did not answer these questions precisely, but they did clearly identify the danger zones of extreme centralization and extreme decentralization. Generally, constitutional federalism stands approximately midway between the extremes of a dangerously strong regime, a national state, and a dangerously weak regime, a mere confederacy, like the Articles of Confederation. The powers delegated by the U.S. Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Those which are to remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite. The federal government is exercised principally on external objects such as war, peace, negotiation, and foreign commerce, while the states retain powers that extend to all the objects in which, in the ordinary course of affairs, concern the lives, liberties, and properties of the people and the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state. The first principle is that the states retain a general police power. The second principle of federalism is that the powers of the federal government are limited and enumerated. In Morrison, Chief Justice Rehnquist wrote that
every law enacted by Congress must be based on one or more of its powers enumerated in the Constitution.
In making that statement, Rehnquist relied on Marbury v. Madison, which held,
the power of the legislatures are defined and limited, and that those limits may not be mistaken or forgotten. The Constitution is written.
The powers of Congress are set forth in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. Those powers include the Commerce Clause, regarded as the most important substantive power vested in the federal government in time of peace. Currently, the United States Supreme Court divides the Commerce Clause into 4 categories. Cases involving the channels of interstate commerce, cases involving the instrumentalities of interstate commerce, persons or things in interstate commerce, and cases involving activities that substantially affect interstate commerce. Gonzales versus Raich came along when federal agents raided the homes of 2 California citizens suffering from severe medical conditions. Deputies from Butte County, California found the residents' cultivation and possession of the medical marijuana to be lawful under California's compassionate use act. But DEA agents disagreed, seizing and destroying 6 marijuana plants. California's act legalizes the medical use of marijuana by authorizing personal use for medicinal purposes when recommended by a physician. The plaintiffs did not purchase or sell marijuana and grew only enough to consume personally. The amount of marijuana involved was trivial. So what happened? The DEA acted under the authority of a federal statute, the Controlled Substances Act. The Controlled Substances Act classifies all controlled substances into 5 separate schedules based on certain factors. Despite evidence regarding marijuana's potential to relieve pain, both Congress and succeeding administrations have elected to leave cannabis subject to a total prohibition under Schedule 1 of the Act, without provision for legal use. The plaintiff sued the Attorney General of the United States for a preliminary injunction preventing the federal government from enforcing the Controlled Substances Act against them. In particular, the plaintiffs wanted the district court to declare the provisions of the CSA prohibiting the manufacture, distribution, and possession of marijuana as unconstitutional as applied to them. The court needed to decide whether the power granted to Congress by the Commerce Clause and the Necessary and Propers Clause includes the power to prohibit interstate, non-commercial cultivation and possession of marijuana for personal medical purposes. The district court denied preliminary injunction. The Ninth Circuit, however, reversed. The Supreme Court granted cert. Relying on a 1942 decision from the Roosevelt Justices, Wickard v. Filburn, the Supreme Court upheld the Controlled Substances Act used to regulate the use and cultivation of medical marijuana. The court held that interstate cultivation and use of marijuana was indistinguishable from the interstate cultivation and use of wheat in Wickard. The court held that the medicinal use of marijuana had a substantial effect on interstate commerce, and that as a consequence, regulation under the Commerce Clause was appropriate, even if the amount of marijuana involved was trivial. Raich is important because it paradoxically expands the Commerce Clause, despite the Supreme Court's long-held understanding that fidelity to the Constitution means giving the words of the Constitution their plain, common-sense meaning. Here, the conduct at issue in Raich was intrastate, not interstate. The conduct was private and personal, and it was not commercial. And the conduct was at most a remote and trivial effect on interstate commerce.